What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, I've got a really good story for you guys today. This one is coming out of the Justice Department, as a matter of fact. And when I saw this, a bunch of different ideas clicked into my head. I'm like, yes, this lawsuit, this lawsuit, this lawsuit, this lawsuit. What am I talking about? Check this out, y'all. Attorney General instructs DOJ to dismiss Georgia election lawsuit. Now, as we know, as I covered in the past, in case you haven't seen those videos, honestly, I wouldn't go back and watch them because, yeah, I was doing a lot of garbage back then. Like, I just wasn't as good as I am now. I'm a lot better now, so for my sake, please don't go watch those old videos. But, however, the Biden administration was notoriously bad for suing states to stop laws that they created. Now, this is kind of normal. I say kind of normal, right? That's kind of what it was set up for, in a certain sense, right? Checks and balances, if you will. If a state makes a law that violates the Constitution, that violates federal government, essentially, then they sue to stop that state from doing so. However, the Biden administration took it a step further and decided that it was going to rule by tyranny and force these states into bending to their will, essentially, like we talk about with Texas. Texas is a really good example. Texas created a law. I forget what it was called, but it was essentially, it gave the authorization to local police departments, sheriff departments, state troopers, to have the ability to arrest criminal aliens and turn them over to ICE for deportation. They created this law, they passed this law, and they started to implement this law. And when the Biden administration got word of this, they sued Texas to stop them from doing that. Now, this is ridiculous on multiple levels. The very first one is obvious, right? So this law in Texas would actually assist the federal government with deporting criminal aliens. Just helping the federal government. That's what this law does. So it's ridiculous for the federal government to say, no, you can't do that. Like, what? It's just stupid on its face. It literally is, right? But then you gotta look at, kind of zoom in on a few aspects of this, right? So that's taking up time, resources, and money from the federal government, from prosecuting criminals, right? Prosecuting other cases that are more important than fighting with a state over them trying to help you, for goodness sakes. So you're taking up time, resources, and money to sue a state, right? So taking taxpayer dollars and spending it on nonsense. Now, though that they've done this, now Texas, they have to, all right, we want to pass this law. We already passed this law, as a matter of fact. We want to keep this law. So now they have to take time, resources, and taxpayer dollars to countersue, like to stop the suit, essentially. And it's just ridiculous nonsense. But the Biden administration, we covered several lawsuits from the Biden administration suing states to stop them from doing stuff. This was one of them we covered. And now that we finally have the adults back in charge, they finally come in and say, okay, this lawsuit is ridiculous, right? Georgia passes some election integrity laws. And, the Biden administration, in their infinite wisdom, comes out and say, oh, it's voter suppression. You're trying to stop black people from voting. Just no evidence at all. They don't bring any evidence. There's never any evidence. But let's get into this before I rant on forever. That is the level of stupidity that we're dealing with from the Biden administration. And people wonder why I got radicalized, if you will. Why I'm a Trump supporter, essentially. Yeah, covering nothing but Biden nonsense news. It'll radicalize anybody. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi on Monday instructed the Justice Department to dismiss a lawsuit challenging a sweeping election overhaul that Georgia Republican lawmakers passed in the wake of President Donald Trump's 2020 election loss in the state. The lawsuit, filed in June 2021 under former President Joe Biden, alleged that the Georgia law was intended to deny black voters equal access to the ballot. Bondi said the Biden administration was pushing false claims of suppression. That is right. They absolutely were. It was a nonsense lawsuit. just ridiculous on its face. The Biden administration did not care about voter integrity whatsoever, because they sued several states over election laws like this. They sued several states over their climate agenda nonsense. They sued several states that wanted to help the federal government, like we just talked about. Georgians deserve secure elections, not fabricated claims of false voter suppression meant to divide us, she said. That is right. So the Biden administration claims without evidence, see how I did that? That there was voter suppression, that this law would impose voter suppression somehow. Like, how? But once again, this is coming from the AP. So, I'm sorry, it's coming from the Daily Kos, so you know that this is going to be biased. Sorry. It's a matter of fact, I didn't lie when I said the AP, because it is from the AP. If you rewind back and look at that headline, it'll say it right there, AP. But that's neither here nor there. The news organization that's carrying the story is the Daily Kos. So we'll give them the credit on this one. The law was part of a trend of Republican-backed measures that tighten rules around voting, passed in the months after Trump lost his re-election bid to Biden, claiming without evidence that voter fraud cost him victory. You see how they love to throw that in there? As a matter of fact, though, that, yeah, sure, he may have got out there sometimes and claimed and did not bring all the the fraud evidence with him and actually show it. Like, that is just one of the most ridiculous things when they throw that in there. Like, Donald Trump comes out and says something, and then they say, oh, well, Donald Trump said this without evidence. But what's funny about that, what's so hilarious about this, is the corporate press, they can run a headline, and they lie so much that they can't keep up with their own lies. So Donald Trump, he'll hear about this news article, and then the next day he'll go and repeat that news article, and then like 3 or 4 days later, once we find out that, hang on, the corporate press lied about that, it actually wasn't this way, it was this way, then the corporate press, the mainstream news, what do? They take Trump's clip and say, oh, well, Donald Trump claimed without evidence, knowing that he got the information from them. It's ridiculous. The fallout was swift after Republican Governor Brian Kemp signed the law in March 2021, with the CEOs of Atlanta-based Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola voicing criticism, and Major League Baseball's commissioner deciding to move that year's All-Star game from Atlanta's Truist Park. Yeah, Truist Park, sure. Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, both Republicans, who drew Trump's ire when they refused to help overturn his 2020 election loss in Georgia, strongly denounced the Justice Department lawsuit when it was filed. Raffensperger on Monday called Bondi's announcement a significant win for Georgia voters. Our commitment has always been to ensure fair and secure elections for every Georgian, despite losing an all-star game and the left's boycott of Georgia as a result of common sense election law, Raffensperger said in a statement. Kemp also welcomed Bondi's announcement. He accused Democrats and others of spreading lies and misinformation and said Georgia is one of the top states in the country for early voting and experienced record voter turnout in the multiple elections since the passage of the Elections Integrity Act. Fair Fight Action, a voting rights advocacy organization started by former Democratic candidate for Georgia Stacey Abrams, sorry about that, y'all, slammed the plans to dismiss the lawsuit, saying the law has made it harder, not easier, for many Georgians to vote. And what is she trying to say with that? Is that supposed to be a bad thing, that it makes it harder to vote? Yes. Yeah, if it's just so easy to vote that anybody can come into this country and go vote, is that a good thing? That's what I would ask Stacey Abrams. Oh, well, criminal aliens don't ever vote. Prove it. That's all you got to say is prove it. Can you prove it? No, you can't. Sure, it might be rare, might not be a lot, but it does happen. So, shh. Dismissing this case doesn't change the truth. It proves Trump's DOJ will not work to protect Americans' freedoms to vote, Fair Fight CEO Lauren Groh-Wargo said in a statement. Known as SB 202, the law added a voter ID requirement for mail ballots, shortened the time period for requesting a mailed ballot, and resulted in fewer ballot drop boxes available in populous metro Atlanta counties that lean Democratic and have a significant black population. See, this is where we get into the media manipulation, because once again, they said, oh, it only, what did it say? It resulted in fewer ballot drop boxes available in populous metro Atlanta counties. Yeah, no, it done that all across the state, as a matter of fact. Yes, it did do it in those counties, and yes, those are Democratic-leaning counties, but it also did that across the entire state. This is media manipulation, folks. They just leave out certain information and lead you down a path of destruction. Make you think that Georgia wrote a law specifically targeting Atlanta to make sure they don't have enough drop boxes. That's what they just told you. Yeah, it doesn't read that way, by the way. It is for the entirety of the state. The law also banned the distribution of food and water by various groups and organizations to voters standing in line to cast a ballot. Once again, that also is leading you down a path of destruction because it is within X amount of feet of a polling location. They can do that outside of that area, as a matter of fact. In announcing the dismissal of the lawsuit, Bondi said black voter turnout in Georgia actually increased after the law was passed. A December analysis by the Brennan Center for Justice found that while the numbers of ballots cast by black voters increased from 2020 to 2024, black turnout actually declined by 0.6% because the increase in the number of ballots cast by black voters did not keep up with population increases. See what I'm talking about, folks? Media manipulation on a constant basis. Of course, you could argue that it's manipulation in both directions, but, Pam Bondi just said that, yeah, it increased, and it did. Now, they're trying to get around this with manipulation. Oh, well, the population increased, but how do we know the black population increased? They didn't say that, did they? No, they didn't. So we don't know. We actually do not know. Because I would suggest to you that how the media manipulates you so often that it probably wasn't that much of an increase in black people in the state of Georgia, that they're just trying to manipulate you once again into taking facts and pushing it over into delusion land, as a matter of fact, because once again, the propaganda machine is strong, and they are in full swing right now, folks. They are trying to manipulate every single news article, just about everything. But once again, that's what I'm here for, y'all. Pointing those things out. Understanding whether or to what extent these declines are due to restrictive voting policies such as Georgia's SB 202, justifiable feelings that the government is not working for them, or a myriad of other factors will be of signal importance. The analysis says, sure. In addition, the Justice Department lawsuit, about half a dozen other lawsuits were filed by civil rights and election integrity groups raising claims based on the U.S.'s Constitution and Federal Voting Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination in voting. Well, guess what, folks? We just passed the SAVE Act. Donald Trump signed it. No, as a matter of fact, he didn't sign that. Or did he? I don't remember. Who cares? He did sign that into law. I'm just kidding. But he also signed an executive order issuing, trying to force the states to get some sort of voter ID, to force every state to have voter ID. This is a good thing. But Democrats, once again, they'll say that's voter suppression. Well, hang on just a second. How is that voter suppression? Like, seriously, you got to show an ID for all kinds of stuff. That makes no logical sense outright. Are you trying to say it's drinking suppression when you have to show an ID to buy beer? Are you trying to say it's, people flying? Are you trying to suppress the flight over here because you have to go through rigorous identification when you get onto an airplane, for crying out loud? Like, that's much more rigorous. It's much harder. Well, Democrats are over here trying to make it harder for you to go fly. Yeah, that's what they're doing. It's nonsense, y'all. It really is. Like, sure, it might make it a little bit harder. You might have to actually go get an ID to go vote, like a specific ID. So what? Do we want integrity in our elections, or don't we? Like, I think we should. Just because you live in this country doesn't mean that you have some God-given right to go vote. You don't have to go vote. But we want to know who is voting, as a matter of fact, if we are going to have all these criminal aliens in the country. That's what I don't get. If we did not have a southern border problem, you wouldn't hear Republicans yelling and screaming about this at all. Why? Because when we didn't have a southern border problem, you didn't have Republicans yelling and screaming about this. That's just the simple facts of the situation. Like, these arguments from Democrats just never make any sense to me whatsoever. Like, they're so easy to break down. It's ridiculous, y'all. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.